Hi, this is Alex from phpacademy.org with a video tutorial for the new Boston. In this tutorial we're going to be taking a look at the draggable interaction in the jQuery UI and how we can drag elements on a page. We're also going to be looking at the options that we can supply. There are a large variety of options that you can choose from for this interaction. However, I've picked out probably the most relevant in terms of usability. We're also going to take a look at some of the events that are associated with this interaction. Okay, so we're going to be dragging a particular element on a page. So we're going to go ahead and first of all create this element on our page. So I'm going to create this as a span. And inside of here, I'm just going to write drag me. Now we did take a look at how to make an object draggable in the last part of the tutorial, this jQuery UI tutorial series. And we looked at how to actually set the draggable interaction on a particular object. Obviously the difference in this tutorial is it's going to be a lot longer because we're going to be looking at the different options we can supply. So I'm going to create or call this span, so give it an ID of drag, so we can use a selector to reference this ID. And you'll notice that I've got UI.js open in my browser, and I've also included this on the page as well as the jQuery UI library and the jQuery library as well. So these two files will handle everything we need. This file, however, is blank, and this is where I'm going to be writing my own code. So the first thing we need to do is set this to draggable. So let's go ahead to our browser and just refresh. You can see that we've just got a span element here. We can do nothing with it at the moment. So what we want to do inside UI.js is check for when the document is ready. So we use the document selector and ready. And inside here we create a function which will handle everything after the document is ready to use or it's loaded. So we need to make this ID here, or this span with an ID of draggable. So the fundamental way to do this would be to use a hash selector to select the ID or the element with the ID drag, and then we just write draggable. Now just this alone is going to allow us to actually drag the element. However, we don't have any constraints and we don't have any additional options supplied to it. We supply all the options within the parentheses here. So let's just take a look in our browser what this has done. We can now actually drag this element around the page. The first thing you'll notice is that we can drag it so it's not in view, and as well here, if you look at the bottom of my browser down here, you can see that we are actually creating a large space because we're able to drag it wherever, and you'll see it does get a bit messy. So we can supply options to constrain this to a particular area on the page. We'll be looking at that first, and we'll also be looking at a few other options that allow us to change the cursor, create some kind of create like a grid style to this, set the opacity, and also reverting back to the original position. So there's lots of options we're going to look at, and we'll be looking at that one by one. We'll then be going on to look at events where we can tell when the dragging has started, when the dragging is happening, and also when the dragging has stopped, so i.e. when the element has been released and the mouse is free, or the cursor is free from the element. So the first option that we're going to look for, or that we're going to talk about, is the axis. Now we can set the axis in which our element moves in. Now at the moment, obviously, we can move it in the X and the Y axis. We can move it wherever we want. However, we want to particularly constrain it to one axis. We can specify this. So for example, if I wanted to specify it just to the X axis and only allow it to move along the X axis, I can do so. Or if I want to constrain it and only allow it to move on the y-axis, we can also do we can do that as well. So when we supply options inside of this draggable function here, we use curly brackets. So I've created some curly brackets inside here. Our option name goes here and our option value goes here. So we've got an option name and a value, and these are comma separated so we can supply more than one. So everything I'm going to talk about you can combine into the same element as well. So like I said, the first thing we're going to be looking at is the axis. So let's go ahead and specify the axis option. Now we can either specify the constraint or the restriction to X or Y, and this is supplied within single quotation marks. So for example, if I wanted to constrain movement only to the X axis, I can do so by specifying axis and then X in single quotation marks. Let's go ahead and check what that's done. You can see now that when I drag it, I can't move it downwards, but I can move it across the X axis. So now that I can move it across the X axis, it won't actually move down the Y axis at all. So we can do the opposite to this and obviously specify that the constraint is only in the Y axis and we can only drag it down now. So that's how to constrain to a particular axis inside the draggable interaction. We're going to take a look now at the containment option. Now containment is extremely useful because, as I mentioned earlier, we can actually drag this anywhere we want. We can drag it out of view here, we can drag it across so we create scroll bars at the bottom. However, what happens if we want to allow the containment only to the current document window, current document or current window? Now the current document will be the document itself, however the window will be the current actual window that's open, so the document might be larger than the window. So we might want to first of all only allow it to be moved inside of the document area. So let's go ahead and choose this containment option. So that's containment, and we have a few options here. The first one we're going to look at is document, as I mentioned. So we just type containment as the option name and then document as the value.